Welcome to a new episode of the Tennis Lifestyle Podcast. I'm Gianluca Sola. In this episode, I chat to Pietie Norval. Pietie is a former professional tennis player from South Africa. He was very successful, especially in doubles, where he won a silver medal at the Barcelona Olympics in 1992, partnering Wayne Ferreira. In the episode, we talk about his tennis journey, his career in singles and in doubles. We also discuss the current state of tennis in South Africa and why South Africa produced so many talented doubles players in the past. Don't miss out also at the end of the podcast where we have the mega rapid fire quiz. That's always fun to listen to. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Ciao, ciao. Hi, Pietie. Can you hear me well?
Yes, Gianluca, I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I hear you perfectly well. Thanks. Thanks for taking time on a Sunday morning, especially to come on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, you're more than welcome. I look forward to it.
Thanks. The person you're listening to, just for my listeners, is Pietie Norval, known as Pietie Norval. He is a South African ex-professional tennis player. Just a bit of background before we get going is Pietie has had an amazing tennis career, especially in doubles. Some of your major accomplishments include career singles high of 125, a doubles highest ranking of 16. In doubles, you won the year-end championship finals in 2000, two ATP Master Series, Key Biscayne in Miami and Hamburg, and you won a total of 14 ATP doubles titles. You also reached the quarters in all slams and a semi in Wimbledon, and also won a silver medal at the Barcelona Olympics in 1992 with partnering Wayne Ferreira. Just some of the players you've played against. There's some tennis greats, which are very interesting. Just a few of them is like Boris, Becker, Michael Stich, Leander Pace, Mark Woodford, Santoro, Querten, and also Roger Federer. If I'm correct, right now you are coaching. You've got your own tennis academy, the Norval Tennis in Gauteng. And I've probably missed out a lot of stuff, but it looks like you've had an amazing career. And out of everything that I've listed there, is there one that really stands out for you the most?
Yeah, that's always a very good question, because sometimes there's results that you achieve that the public sees as something unique or special, and then there's results that you achieve where you felt you might have played some of your best tennis, which you feel yourself. So if I can split it into those two categories, I think the Olympic Games, the Olympic silver medal was a very special achievement from a public point of view, seeing the situation our country was in back then, not having taken part in the Olympic Games in 32 years. And Wayne and I won the first medal in 32 years, post-isolation era in sport for our country. So I think that was very, very big from a sporting point of view, and also seeing it was quite difficult for all our other sports to take part in international sport, and for us to having been the first to do it was I think was very special. And I think personally, I think winning the ATP finals was the best playing result, seeing that amongst the professionals, the ATP finals are seen as the most difficult tournament to win on tour.
Yes.
the reason for that is because obviously you need to beat 4 of the best teams in the world in 1 week, and that often, even if you win a Grand Slam, you don't have to do that because people lose.
Yes.
But winning the ATP finals, you have to play against the best teams, top 8 teams in the world, and you've got to beat all 4 of them to win it. So I qualified for the ATP finals a couple of times, but in 2000 I managed to win it, and I felt that was probably the best playing achievement I had over the years.
Okay, fantastic. And you did that with the American, am I right? Was that Donald? Was that in 2000? Am I right? Passing.
Yes, Johnson. He was an American player, and he was like me. Also, most of the years a top 10 team doubles player, and I've played against him often. And in that year, we decided to partner up, once or twice.
Okay.
I recall partnering up with him, I think on clay courts early in the season. The first tournament we played, we won. Then we didn't play together for a couple of weeks, and we decided, okay, let's play again. We played a tournament on grass. We won it again, and then said, okay, let's play. And then we started playing the summer leading up to the US Open. We had a good season, and then we had a really good season indoors. So that's that makes you think you should have maybe played with a guy a bit earlier, but that's just how it works out. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back. Tell us about your tennis journey. Where did it start? With who? If you can just tell us how you got into tennis. Yeah.
When I was young, about 5 or 6 years old, my oldest brother played some of the local tournaments down in Cape Town, where I grew up, and very similar to what the kids play these days, the weekend mini series tournaments. And I was hitting against the wall at home, and my brother was playing a couple of local tournaments, and he said to my mom, "No, look, you should let this guy go play. He can hit the ball against the wall." And that's how it started. I played, and the second tournament I played, I won. And I just started playing all the local tournaments in my area until I started getting better, and I started traveling to the countrywide tournaments to play them. Are very similar to the Growth Point Super 8 events that we have around the country at the moment in the holidays, where all the best juniors play. And I started traveling to these tournaments, and I had a very good friend who lived in the same neighborhood, and he was at the same level I was, and we started practicing together and training together, and also traveling to tournaments together. We became best friends, and by the time we were under 12, we were both number 1 and 2 in the country, and we remained best friends all the way going onto the tour later years. His name is David Nankin. He works for the USTA and coaches various pros on the tour. He had a different route to mine, but so we and then we had a pretty strong group of players in the same age group throughout the juniors, and basically maybe.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Were you one of the juniors who won the nationals? Was very, very good, or were you just a top 10? Let's put it that way. Or were you number 1, won all the nationals, blah blah blah?
Yes, I was the number 1, but my parents, what they did with me, which I believe to do with certain juniors, if their character can handle it. When I got close to number 1 when I was about 10, 11 years old, and then they decided to skip an age group to give me stronger tennis.
Okay.
So and then playing in the higher age group, I ended top 8 in the country the next year. And when I went back to my same age group the next year, I was actually 1 level already ahead of them. And then I was by far number 1. And I repeated that in the following age group. And I must say, in my case, it worked because it elevated me a level above my competition. But from past experience and having coached the last almost 20 years, obviously, if a young player does that or wants to do that, they got to understand that you will lose for a while before you start winning. So I guess that's the risk you take with certain players.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess also I don't know if you agree, but maybe junior results are probably not that important if you want to take your tennis to a different level later.
I do agree. It's not relevant. There's been so many examples. By the time I got onto the tour and played against everybody that you mentioned before, everybody had a different route. It was clear that most of the players were quite relatively talented, good athletes, and they obviously were extremely motivated to become great players. But they didn't necessarily have to be a great player at 10, 11, 12 years old, like guys like Agassi was from my era, Sampras maybe. Those guys are my age, and some of them started pretty young, and they were good juniors and also very good juniors. And then there were others that came on the tour that hardly played good juniors at all. They just took a different route and came on the tour and became great players. So there is no certain pathway. But I think as a junior player, you need to compete. You need to enjoy competing. You don't have to win everything, but the competing is important. And obviously with the young kids, they're developing at different ages. So that plays a huge role, because if it's a big guy or girl, they can possibly be much better when they're younger, but they'll have challenges when they're older because maybe their game wasn't developed enough. So the pathway that was mine, but I believe there are different ones.
And what, let's say, after your juniors, was there a period or a moment, Becker, that you decided, let's take this further, or your parents or your coach together with you?
Yes, there was. I was watching TV back in those days with limited TV, where we used to watch Wimbledon back in the day, and you could even see that it was possible to become a professional player and earn money from playing tennis and travel around the world. So that was quite attractive. And even at a young age of about 10, I started dreaming about that, and that's what I wanted to do. So that at an early age already, I wanted to be a professional player and get out there and play. And obviously that was just a dream. And at around the age of about 15, 16, when I started to do really well and even play senior tournaments and play entry-level ATP events, I got my first ATP points at the age of 14, going into 15. And so I saw that I was already competitive. And yes, so even from that young age, I already knew I wanted to be a professional player.
Okay. Was I don't know, in those days, I'm pretty sure it was going to a US college ever considered in your case?
Yes, very much. It was. If you look at the two pathways I took versus my best friend that I mentioned earlier, we were relatively the same level. I started to do slightly better than him at the end of or the middle of the juniors, you could say. But what happened to me is I, at the age of 17, I already qualified at an ATP 250 event in Toulouse in France, and won a match in a main draw and started beating top guys in the top 100 already at the age of 17. So what happened to me is I was never going to go to college, because of the fact that at the end of my 18th year, when I was supposed to go to college, I was already in the top 150 in the world. So it was relatively impossible then to go to college, and give up that opportunity. Within 6 months, I was main draw of the Grand Slams in singles. So after that, in my middle of my 19th year, I was main draw Wimbledon. So obviously you're not going to give that up to go to college. So whereas my best friend took the other route, he went to UCLA and spent 2.5 years playing college, and then felt he was good enough to go on the tour, and then he went on the tour. So it was way more common for the players to go to college first and then go on the tour in my years. But you did get cases where guys matured early and they wanted to go straight on the tour. But I would say that was maybe 10-15% of the players that ended up on the tour with me later years that did that, the route that I took.
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, if you're very good already at that age, then it's probably worth giving it a shot. Are you hearing? Sorry, Pietie, to ask you this, but are you hearing me nice and clear? Because your voice is a little bit broken up.
I am hearing you clear. Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Another question I had is did you start off playing singles and doubles, or I'm always curious the transition. How did the transition into doubles happen?
Yes, no. Look, I was playing predominantly singles in the beginning, like most players do. And as I mentioned, I started doing well quite young, and it was almost only singles. When you were still young, you couldn't really do both that much. Doubles actually also took a little bit out you, and I was in the main draw of the Australian Open singles in the beginning of my 19th year in January. That was my first main draw appearance directly on my ranking. And then I was main draw Wimbledon that same year. And what happened to me is that was the height of my singles career at Wimbledon. I was going to do really well on the grass. It suited my game style. And 2 weeks before Wimbledon, I played one of the warm-up tournaments on grass. And I was playing in the semi-finals against a top player. I remember beating a top 30 player in the quarterfinals and the semis. I was playing, I can't remember, but it was 6-6 in the tiebreaker and in the first set, and I went for a volley. The weather is really cold in England that time of the year, and I snapped my wrist and had a really bad wrist injury. I ended up playing Wimbledon just because of the fact that I wanted to. It was a dream of mine to play in the main draw there for the first time, but I shouldn't have. And I was main draw all the tournaments leading up to the US Open, the whole summer circuit for the rest of the year. And I had to withdraw from everything because of the injury. I was out for 9 months. And when I came back after that 9 months, it was the year between 1989 and 1990, and what happened on the ATP tour, if you go back in the history in those years, they had one of the biggest changes on the ATP tour. Well, the biggest change with marketing, with ranking systems between 89 and 90. So when I came back, that change had happened. That change was quite negative towards my ranking. When I left, my ranking was about 120. And when I came back, my ranking was like 250 because I didn't play enough tournaments. And the new ranking system was based on playing a lot of tournaments, just like it is today. And that kind of hurt me. And when I came back, and I was, for some reason, it took me longer to come back to the level that I was. And during that period, I started playing some doubles just because I was traveling with Wayne in the same group. We used to have that Tennis South Africa TSA traveling squads with a couple of the top guys traveling together with a coach. And what happened with Wayne and I in that period is the first day we stepped on the court to play doubles together, we started winning everything we played. And that I must say that had a negative effect on my singles career when I started to come back to play the singles as well. Because what happens, with singles versus doubles, let's say if you play on the Challenger Tour going into the ATP Tour, if you have a very good week in doubles, you're playing Monday to Saturday. The problem is you have to fly to the next tournament and play qualifying and sign in for qualifying Friday night to play qualifying on Saturday morning. So if you're in the semifinals of the previous week's doubles, you can't play the qualifying for the next week. So that's how it works on the tour. So if that happens too many weeks in a row, you are basically missing too many weeks of singles because you're doing so well in doubles. And that is exactly what happened to me. It happened too many times. You start, the few times you do play singles, you're not as sharp as the other guys that are playing it every week. And then eventually your ranking gets worse and worse. Your doubles ranking gets better and better, and your singles ranking gets worse and worse. And it's difficult to bridge that gap. And that's exactly how it happened to me.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. One of the questions I really wanted to ask you, and actually when I met you at the tournament we had here in Cape Town in December, I mentioned it to you. is your generation in South Africa had a huge amount of great doubles players. I'm going to miss a lot of them out, but I mean, just to mention Wayne Ferreira, John Jaeger, Robbie Koenig, Chris Haggard, Marius Barnard, David Adams. I mean, there were at least, I don't know, I haven't really counted or anything, but there were at least easily over 10 top 100 doubles players from South Africa. Why was that? How did that happen? Was it just, was it something to do with the training back then, the system, sponsorships, the federation? I mean, that's quite unusual. What happened?
Well, I think what's interesting to the general public, what happened is, firstly, is what happened with the game of tennis during the middle 90s. That's very important, because what happened with the South Africans is many of the South Africans grew up in high altitude, so they were used to very, very fast conditions. And even internationally, the game, even if the game was played at coast level, many of the tournament's conditions, the court surface as well as the ball was fast. So you would have a lot of serve and volleyers on tour those days, even more so than ground stroke players. So even internationally, a lot of players were serve and volleying and playing way more aggressive than they do today. So So what happened is, obviously the South African game style suited that, because most players played aggressively, and even playing up in high altitude. Let's say at least half the players that ended up on tour came from high altitude conditions. So obviously then they were definitely serve and volleying because it was so fast. And so what happened to the tour? So for that reason, there was a lot of players that were successful playing, let's say, fast tennis. So the good singles players were very good serve and volleyers, and obviously if you're a good serve and volley, you're going to be a good doubles player, because it's played at the net, and that's just the way it is. So that's the reason why we had so many good doubles players. There was even more. I recall the one year having 17 guys in the main draw of the Wimbledon doubles, South Africans. I don't know if any country has ever had more. So that's quite an amazing stat. And
that's incredible.
Yeah. And so what happened then in the middle of 90s is the ATP made a very strong move towards making all the court surfaces around the world slower. And also not just making the surface slower, but also the ball. They made the ball more fluffy. So and the reason for that is they for reasons of making the sport more attractive to the public, they wanted the rallies to be longer, because they felt that it would be more attractive. And so slowly but surely they started making it slower from about 95 to 2000, which was my last year on tour. And unfortunately for the guys that were serve and volleying, and let's say serve specialists, as you remember back in the day, it became impossible on certain surfaces to serve and volley. It was really impossible. Unless
I'd like to maybe add to that. Also, another element must have been the strings. With the introduction of the poly strings, it made it really easy for someone just to stay at the back of the court as well. So it was like a double.
It was like you're right.
Effect.
Definitely. When Luxelon came on the tour, it was like a huge scientific invention, and it gave the guys so much extra whip on the ball. So for the guys that came to net, if you did come to net, you had to come to net on a really good shot. Even the guys that serve and volleyed that weren't very good off the baseline, they would have to spend a bit more time on the baseline before they could get to net. On second serves anymore, it was just impossible. The returner just had way too much time to play the passing shot or the return. So it really changed things. If you recall back in the day, players like Tim Henman is a great example. He was a full-on serve and volley. He had some ground strokes, but I mean, when I personally speak to Henman today, even he says clearly that slower ball, had a huge effect on his results in the second half of his career, because it just became too slow. Otherwise, he could have maybe won a Grand Slam. So.
Especially Wimbledon. Wimbledon, there's a particular year, I don't remember exactly which one, where they to, I mean, some players even were saying they went from the French to Wimbledon and it seemed like the same speed. So
that is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
What they did at Wimbledon is they started cutting the grass in the opposite direction. So they used to cut the grass from the net to the baseline. So the grain of the grass was very fast and the ball stayed low. And then they started cutting the grass in the opposite direction to make the ball bounce higher. So that's the one change which also made it slower. And also the ball, even today, if you go to Wimbledon, the men and the women do not use the same ball.
Yes.
The women's ball is 50% slower than the men's ball. So they had a couple of changes to make the men's game especially extremely slow. You know, the days I used to play Wimbledon, it was so fast. You know, I mean, I recall playing Goran Ivanisevic with his serve. You know, he's got a rocket of a serve back in those days. You know, that serve, you know, you'd be that serve would come at your head height through the court at a huge pace. So, you know, it really was very, very fast back in those days. So if you did have a good serve, it would be a huge example. That's one of the reasons why I came on the tour, because my serve was very strong. I possibly had a top 10, top 20 in the world serve, and that helped me to play in those fast conditions. But like I said, you know, it changed over the years, and it made it difficult to play the game with only a serve and maybe, let's say, one more shot. Now it's, you know, the guys out there today, you know, they've got to have so much more.
Would you agree that maybe with this change in surfaces, speeds and balls and so on, it's maybe made tennis more boring? Do you think we should go back to the speeds of the courts very different to each other?
Well, if you listen to what Federer says these days, when he talks about the speed surfaces, he's very diplomatic in his point of view. Obviously, he would like the faster surfaces because that suits his game style. But but for me, look, for me, when I watch tennis on TV and when I do still attend some of the international events every now and again, you know, the tennis is very attractive. I must say, even for me, that used to play a different style. You know, I love the way the guys are playing, and it's aggressive, and it's, you know, they're hitting the ball at an amazing speed. So look, it is worrying how weak they are at the net. I must say, you know, that if you look at the way we used to play and how good our volleys used to be compared to how bad they volley these days, and they really do volley badly compared to my era, the pros. With the exception maybe of one or two players in the top 100, of which Federer is one, but the rest really volley. They do not volley even close to the same level, but they don't have to. That's the thing, you know. So if like you just mentioned, if there was a move, as Federer mentioned, in the last 2 weeks, I read something that Federer said that he would like to see some tournament directors around the world make some of their courts a bit faster. And because that would really challenge these baseline these heavy baseline players to do. They're going to have to come to net a little bit at least, and that would force them to start improving their net game, or let's say the attacking part of their game even. And I think that would be a nice addition. I wouldn't want to go back to the very fast all the way through the circuit, because that would be negative, I think. But I would like to see certain tournaments become very fast and see how some of the players adapt to that.
Yeah, maybe just do a season leading to, not a season, but a month or two leading to Wimbledon, where there's more grass, tournaments, and very fast. Yeah, make them all very fast. That could be a nice introduction, maybe. Yeah.
No, absolutely, I agree. Yeah, that would be, obviously that's it's difficult for the ATP Tour to, with their calendar, to get everything fitted into the year. And at the moment, it's, you know, with COVID, it's even worse. But assuming they're back to a normal time, you know, that would be the best time to do it. But if they wanted to do that on the calendar physically, they would obviously need to have a bigger gap between the French Open and Wimbledon to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible. You know, they needed an extra 2-3 weeks there, which is not impossible to create. But I know the players on the tour are quite negative when they start talking about extending the length of the tour. they feel their off season, they need it in order to recover year in, year out. So so that's, I don't know if it's possible to happen, but I must say it would be nice to see something in that direction.
Yeah. I wanted to now maybe ask you, I want to be like very critical now, because I think I can after having lived in South Africa for 20 years. But if you look at the last 20 years, South Africa, with the exception of maybe Kevin Anderson, which obviously, every country, and in tennis, there's tons of countries that have exceptions. You can't look at exemptions. You could look at Bulgaria with Dimitrov and Cyprus with Bagdatis and so on. But with the exception of Kevin Anderson, South Africa has not produced a great or a number of great players or good players even in the last 20 years. Right now, we are standing with only 3 top 1,000 players, and the 2 best are around 100. What's going on? Why do you think that is?
Yes, that is a huge worry the last 20 years. When I came off the tour pretty much 20 years ago, is the time when I got involved into junior tennis straight away. And I must say, I found it extremely enjoyable to work with the young players in my own country. I was always going to come back and do it. And when I came back was pretty much the time when things started to deteriorate badly in our country, maybe with all sport, not just with tennis, but personally, obviously, I can give an opinion on what happened with the tennis because I was around it. I was around the federation during that time quite a bit. I started that big academy down in Stellenbosch in 2001. And I must say that it was tough to see how the junior tournaments started getting weaker, firstly. Secondly, the few ATP Tour events, challenges, the big local circuit that we had in the country had a huge effect on opportunities for young players. In my years, as you recall, we had 3 satellites. That basically means 12 futures in a row in our country. We had 9 challenges, and we had a big ATP Tour event in our own country. So it gave you that huge starting block to get your career going. You can make a lot of points, ATP points, WTA as well, inside our country, and then you can travel. So that makes the initial traveling a lot easier. And what's happened is, for many reasons, possibly politically, the companies that used to support tennis, the big companies like the LTEC of the past that supported and put a Standard Bank that put a lot of money into tennis, they lost faith in management of sport in general and also in tennis, and they started withdrawing sponsorship, and obviously that means not being able to host all these tournaments. And therefore the kids had less opportunities in our country. Now, obviously, South Africa is quite far away from the rest of the world, which means that it became expensive for the kids to be able to get out there and compete and get even their first points. And I think that just got worse and worse as the years got along, and it became more difficult. So for me, the number one reason for having less players out on the tour today is the lack of local competition, international competition in our own country.
Lack of tournament.
Absolutely. It's not for me so much the coaching and academies and things like. To be quite honest, I think the academies and the coaching around the country now is a lot better than it was back in my day. A lot better. And so it's not that there aren't that many pros that are coaching juniors around the country. There's just myself and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 more that are still involved with juniors, and I hope some more of the ex-pros can get involved. But my opinion is that the role that the tournaments play that we need is much bigger. If you have your local tournament, then obviously it's easier for the kids to play against national players in their own backyard. So I believe that was the biggest thing in our country.
Okay, no, it makes sense. Yeah, tournaments are very important. I mean, I would like to extend that also to, I'm sure it's the same answer, but if you look at the women's tennis, it's even worse. I mean, honestly, it's like inexistent at this moment. I think there's 3 in the top 1,000 and nobody in the top 400. Probably that's the same reason, I don't know, of lack of tournaments. And then I'm very much, as you may know, also I've got a couple of kids who play the TSA tournaments, juniors. The junior, and so I've been doing this for 7, 8 years now, the whole tournaments and so on. And take a pinch of salt, but the juniors also, when I look around, I don't see anything very exciting. I know it's difficult to judge a junior, but I don't see any juniors that really stand out, to be honest. And the other thing is, I think the mentality of the juniors, even the ones that are pretty good, their goal is, well, let's try and go into a US college. They're not even thinking, I want to try and become a professional. What do you think about that?
Yes, well, in 2 parts, just regarding the girls and the ladies that play, yes, that it is a huge worry, and I know it's a huge worry to everybody in the country that the girls are not taking the next step from being a good junior or possibly a very good junior to going on the tour. I think I've got my opinion on that. I think that that over the years, when you had good systems in the country, it helped the girls to be able to play longer locally, and you can almost say be in a safer environment before until they're mature enough to be able to travel the world. Because what happens now is most of the girls that try and play, they have to go do it on their own. Maybe they've got a parent traveling with, or they've got a coach traveling with, but they're not traveling in a structured group. Maybe with an experienced person, being far away from South Africa. And our girls, especially the last 20 years, they tend to not travel as well as the girls that did more than 20 years ago. They, well, I don't want to use the word, but they've gotten softer. So it's, as you know, once you get out there, in the rest of the world, it's tough out there, to travel and be on your own for long periods away from home. And I just don't think our girls emotionally handle that part well. I think our girls are extremely talented. If you look at the juniors, you've seen it as well. You see a lot of talent, and there's no lack in talent. But talent bears a very small role once you go play professional talent. Talent means nothing. And it's all about grit and how tough you can be, how long you can last out there, how many times you can keep on trying. And that's where I think we lack it. And I think the only way to get around that in the modern time, if you see the young girls now traveling from Europe and Eastern Europe, those countries where the kids grow up pretty tough, but they still travel. They still travel with somebody they trust. These girls, they still travel in a very small group. The federation still send them, and we, our federation can't afford to do that. So I think that's the challenge. So I think it's not impossible to improve that in the next 20 years, but it'll have to be more structured where they can travel with in a small group with 2 or 3 or 4 with an experienced coach. Then we can do it, and then obviously to have more tournaments for them locally would also be an improvement. And then, so I hope that can happen. Jean-Luc, sorry, that second part of the question?
No, look, I just wanted to know, it's a very good answer. Because I asked this not only about South Africa, but everybody I interview from all over the world. And it really actually comes down to always the same points, the same, there's boxes that must be ticked. And in tennis, maybe unlike many other sports, it seems to me that these boxes are many. There's lots of boxes that need to be ticked. Nowadays, you just can't just say, well, I'm a great tennis player. You need to have support, financial support. You need to, as you say, have a lot of tournaments in your own country. Maybe there's a good reason now also to have more clay courts. There's a lot of talk about that. So there's so many boxes that need to be ticked, and the federation maybe needs to help and give bonuses to academies, coaches or players if they win, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole system. So, no, I completely agree with you. And I think it's on my personal level, if I must say, being in South Africa, I think, yeah, I mean, every country, there's talent everywhere. But as you said, that talent actually won't really get you anywhere in tennis. Well, it will only get you so far. Then there's all the other boxes that need to be ticked. And I think it's going to take a long time to get everything in order, but I hope so.
Yes. Yes, just listening to you there, Jean-Luc, on that second part and mentioning the talent and even the boys. I think it's very true what you said. The same with the boys as with the girls. You do see talent, and the boys do travel a little bit easier than the girls do. They're able to do that, but I think our boys at the moment in our country, they don't quite understand what it takes to be a professional player. They do understand what it takes to be a good junior, as well as having a goal to go to the US and try to get a scholarship in the States, because those are all possible goals. But there's a very big gap between that goal and being a professional tennis player. As you mentioned, all those boxes that need to be ticked now, they need to be ticked very accurately if you want to give yourself a shot at being a top 100 player. If you look at Lloyd Harris at the moment is our only guy that's gone out, and he really grinded it out in futures, playing all those futures in Egypt and around the world and in many places before he makes it to challenger level, and obviously to where he is now. He's been he's only been mostly just inside the top 100. So if you, in my opinion, you're only a professional player, or let's say a successful professional player, if you can break the top 100 and frequently compete in the main draw of the Grand Slams, in singles, and if you're in doubles, it's probably top 50. So and it's not easy to get there. That's the problem, So so there would have to be a huge shift, and I think that shift is probably what Tennis South Africa is trying at the moment to the best of their ability. They've got a couple of challenges coming up now. I see at Rian Vente in Potch, which is positive. I personally did some commentating last year when they had those futures in Joburg at the old Ellis Park Stadium and in Pretoria. So if we can get some of these futures and challenges back in the country, I think the chances will become bigger that the kids will aspire to go that route a bit more.
That's correct. Yeah. No, agree. Yeah, I think if they can get a bit like they do in Turkey or Egypt or Tunisia or whatever, like 6 weeks of futures or 4 weeks at least to start off with that, and then a couple of challenges and maybe grow it. Yeah,
no, that's great.
Will go a long way to help the tennis. I'm nearly finished. Before going on to my mega rapid fire quiz, which don't worry, won't be long. Would you ever consider coaching an ATP or WT player? Have you ever been approached, or would you even enjoy going on the tour again as a coach?
Look, in the past, I've had the choice whether to only work with juniors in my own country versus going on the tour and working with professionals on the tour. And what I would like isn't possible. I would like the best case scenario of working with juniors in my own country, which was my initial dream when I started coaching back in Stellenbosch, is to create players out of your own academy and then obviously take some of them on the tour on a part-time basis. But that's extremely, to a certain extent, I did that. Back in the day in Stellenbosch, I had guys coming through the academy. I coached Isak van der Merwe that got to about 100 in the world. I coached Jeff Coetzee. He became top 10 in the world in doubles. And Raven Carlson came out of the Cape Town satellite of the academy I had down there. And Ruan Roelofse played Davis Cup. Jalpie de Klerk, Nicolas Scholes, Marjorie Leroux Fed Cup. I had about 10 players that I coached that came through that academy. They didn't make it to the top level of the tour, but they made it to, let's say, Davis Cup or Fed Cup level, and some of them a little bit further. But for me personally, I don't want to be on the tour full time as a professional coach. I do enjoy working with juniors way more than I do, spending 2 hours with a guy on tour per day. It's not enough for me. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I want to do more, I do enjoy keeping in touch with my fellow ex-professionals on the tour. A couple of years ago, I got invited to consult for Rohan Bopanna in India. He's a top Indian doubles player, also one of the best in the world back in his day. And he started an academy in his hometown in Bangalore, and I traveled back and forth, a couple of weeks a year to help him with his academy. I must say I really enjoyed doing that. And then, and also every now and again, if somebody invites me to come on the tour, let's say for just a 2-week period, like I used to do with Isak van der Merwe and with Jeff Coetzee, I enjoy going back on the tour and seeing all my friends from back in the days, and obviously, staying in touch with tennis at that level is very enjoyable. But I must say, I don't want to do it 35, 40 weeks a year.
Okay. Finally, I had a quick look on your, ATP profile. It's still there. Obviously, you're not playing anymore. But it was funny because it says you enjoy golf, parachuting, and bungee jumping. Are you an adrenaline junkie? Or are you still jumping off airplanes? Is that something you're still doing?
I might have to contact the ATP and make 1 or 2 adjustments to that old profile. There's been some, I've aged, unfortunately, or fortunately, over the last many years. That's basically on 25, almost 30 years ago. The golf part I still do. At the moment, I live in Peakenwood Golf Estate, just by the Hartbeespoort Dam, right in between Johannesburg and Pretoria. And I'm going to play golf this afternoon. So Sunday afternoons are my golfing afternoons. So I do enjoy that. I've got my friends here, and we play golf, and I really do enjoy that. The other adrenaline things I don't do anymore. I must say, when I was very young and on the tour and things, and we every opportunity we wanted to do some fun stuff, and that was all part of it. And I think my profile is based on my day in, day out opinion back then. But I don't do that dangerous stuff anymore.
Okay, needs to be updated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I usually end my podcast with this mega rapid fire quiz. You can just answer whatever you feel like, as short as possible or as long as possible. It doesn't really matter.
I'm ready.
Are you ready? All right. Okay, what's your very first memory of tennis?
My brother.
Okay. Playing with your brother.
My brother getting me to play tennis.
Oh, okay. If somebody that never saw you play, and you need to describe what type of player you are, define what type of player you are, how would you describe yourself?
Serve and volley.
Your best shot?
Serve.
Did you have a tennis idol growing up?
Bjorn Borg.
Okay. Currently, favorite player, male or female? If you've got one. Federer. Okay. List the big 3, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, from your favorite to least favorite.
Federer 1, Djokovic 2, Nadal 3.
Okay. Is there one match that you played which you can say it's the best you have ever played?
The finals of the ATP finals in Bangalore against the Indian couple, Bhupati Pays, who's one of the 2 best 3 teams of all time during that period, and beating them in straight sets, best out of 5.
Okay. Best tournament in the world?
Wimbledon.
Favorite surface?
Hard courts.
Yeah. This one's a bit of a funny one, but I'll ask it. Favorite tennis shoe?
Adidas.
Okay. Do you know what strings you play with and tension?
I used to play with Bo Brand, who was the competition for VS Gut, and tension was 62.
Okay, wow, that's quite a tight tension. Favorite all-time racket?
Wilson.
Yeah, this one I like. If you have to book a restaurant and invite 3 players, any era, male or female, which restaurant will you book and who will you invite?
Oh, the restaurant, it's difficult. We went to so many. It'll be, geez. Yeah, the restaurant stuff, I can't remember those restaurants anymore. It'll be in New York City. Picking one of the great restaurants we used to go there. 3 players that I would like to spend time with. I know Federer well, but it's always nice to spend time with him. And he's one of the nicest guys on tour. He's the one. And then I would have Nadal with him, because him and Nadal are close. And I don't know Nadal personally, but I know his coaches very well. They used to be on the tour with me. And the third player would be, I would just like to ruffle their feathers a bit, these guys, and I'll bring Serena Williams in just to keep it interesting.
Okay, wow, some big names there. You said you know the old coaches, coaches of Nadal. Is that because I also recently interviewed Geoffrey Porter? Is that one of them?
No,
you know?
I'm very good friends with Francesco Roig.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Roig.
Right.
Obviously, Carlos Moya I know well, and I played him, but Roig was a friend. We were close. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Do you like cooking?
Not at all. I'm a real South African Buddha boykie. I love braaiing and being outside, but the cooking part, it's not that I don't like it. I just don't do it. I've got a wonderful wife that can take part of that part of my life, and she cooks great.
Okay. What's your favorite food?
Braaivleis and vegetables.
Tea coffee? Or coffee? Coffee. Let's see. Other than golf, is there any other hobby that you have which is maybe a bit unique?
No, not that on a week in out week out basis. The way my life is now, it's not that I've got golf that I try to play once a week if I get around to do that. I'm very busy with coaching with young players, so that spends most of my time. The rest of the time, around that I spend with my lovely wife, and in the holidays, occasion every now and again, I get to see some of my kids that are still down in Cape Town, and my oldest son plays college tennis in the States, so I don't get to see him much. But he's in just gone into his 4th year, his final year of playing college tennis in the States, and otherwise that's it. I've got a close group of friends here where I live in Peakenwood Golf Estate, and if we can get together with friends, that's very special to me. Is being with a group of 4 or 5 or 6 couples that generally do things together, and that's pretty much my life.
Okay, no, that's great. If you have to choose between sea, city, mountain, or countryside, what's your favorite?
In the past, it was always sea. I grew up in Cape Town, and after my pro career, I built my dream house there on the ocean and living on the beach, and I did that for a few years, and I enjoyed that. And I must say, obviously living up in the Johannesburg area now, the last 7-8 years, I haven't done that, so I miss it a little bit in order to do that, but it's not practical for me. So if I could have a big split between the sea, the sea and let's call it the mountain lifestyle, that would be ideal.
Okay. Are you superstitious? A lot of tennis players are. Are you superstitious?
No, I'm not.
No. What's your favorite country in the world? Can't be South Africa.
Switzerland.
Okay. Favorite city?
That would be London.
And is tennis the most difficult sport in the world,
yes,
do you think? In 2050, about 30 years from now, do you think tennis will look very different?
It would be less different than it was the gap between, let's say, 1970 and 2000, because that's a 30-year period. I think it will be less different in the following 30 years, because obviously you can only hit the ball that hard and be that fast. So I think it will be different, but less different between the change from wooden rackets to the more powerful rackets that you see today.
Okay. And we're nearly finished. We're going to create your perfect all-time tennis player. And you have to choose male or female or any era again. It doesn't matter. Let's start with the serve.
Karlovic.
Return.
Djokovic.
Forehand.
Del Potro.
Backhand.
Djokovic.
Volley.
Edberg.
Drop shot.
Federer.
Movement.
Djokovic.
Mentality.
Djokovic.
Touch. Feel touch.
Rafter.
Presence. Aura. Like presence aura.
Becker.
Oh, that was a good one. That was pretty much a Djokovic player with a few extra. But I mean,
absolutely. Look, you mentioned earlier, Gianluca, about obviously the good players, and that I still think Djokovic is going to be the greatest player of all time. That's my opinion, and you can see that in my in some of the strength that he has. But obviously, he still has to do it, so it's difficult to say it before he does it.
Yeah. If I can say something, it's not, this big three, I'm sure it will continue forever. Who's the best, and this guy's the best, and that guy's best, and Federer is the best, and Nadal's the best, etc. So there will never be a real answer. But I think if you take at their peak those three players, I would say Djokovic is the best at his peak.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Finished, Pietie. I've got a final question, which I ask everyone, and it is: ask yourself a question and answer it. It doesn't have to be personal. It can be any type of question.
How good do you think you could have been if everything went right in your career?
Okay, that's a good one.
In my case, I did everything I could in doubles, so I couldn't have done more. But I've got some regrets with that bad injury I got when I was at the height of my singles career. And I believe I don't think I would have been top 20, top 30, but you know, I was probably bound to be at least top 50 because the old ranking system, I would have done that within 6 months if I didn't get that 9-month delay. So that is my answer, is to if I could have seen how far I could have gone with the singles without any obstacles in the way.
Yeah, no, sure. Fantastic. Yeah, thanks a lot, Pietie. That was really interesting. I really do hope this recording is good. I had a few moments where it wasn't good, but I'm sure it will be fine. And thanks for taking your time, some time, especially on a Sunday morning. It was great talking to you. And yeah, you had some really, really interesting opinions. So thanks a lot, and hopefully see you maybe, well, I probably will, in a few tournaments around.
All right, Gianluca. Yeah, nice to talk to you. I'll see you around. Take care, man.
Okay. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.